Hey, what's happening YouTube? This is Josh and Chris from Sword Carolina coming at you with our next installment of the Doughbringer 2.0. Some of you guys have asked what manuscripts we're pulling off of, and it's really the big three, pulling off the MS-32-27A, which is commonly referred to as the Doughbringer manuscript, the Pseudo, Peter von Danzig, and the Ringek. That's the three manuscripts that I'm pulling all of this information from, and the only three. So last time we covered the Krumphau, and that was the Krump to the flat of the sword and the follow-up attack that comes from there. And then in the previous series, we covered all the follow-up techniques. And honestly, it's all good. Just go back and watch it. There's nothing I can really add to it outside of one small thing. So in the previous video, everything went very high and into the Edelkrieg, right? The Noble War or the High War, however you want to interpret it. So everything went high, and I just wanted to highlight that that's only produced because of a particular distance. So if we're here fighting, right, and I cut towards Chris, and he crumps my sword, right, and he tries to cut me in the head, and I pull back into my left ox, and we're at a good distance, then we're gonna, then the potential for the Edelkrieg is gonna happen. If we both take a step towards each other though, right, I cut towards Chris, he crumps my sword, right, and tries to cut me in the head, and I do the response, okay, I don't want to try and pull all the way back so I can get into a thrusting distance. So honestly, in this situation, I can do, in any situation, you can do any of your three woundings, right? So here I have the stronger part of my sword on a weaker part of his sword. I could do similar to a half Zucken. I could honestly just push right through his sword right there. So don't get stuck into the paradigm that it has to go high, or it has to this, or it has to that. These are guidelines that are built on the foundation of principles. All right, so just want to cover that. So I didn't want to leave just a short video, so what are we going to do? We're going to do it. We're going to do it, all right? Here we go. We're going to dive into the Krump to the hands in Ochs. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we mentioned in the last video. We didn't really highlight it, and honestly, this interpretation has gone through a number of different things, but I'm pretty happy with what I got right now. Always looking at new things, but I'm pretty happy with it. So here we go. The big thing is Chris is up in Ochs, all right, and he is here. He's got his point on line, right? So if I try and Krump to his hands, he's just going to thrust me. Okay, all right, so that's kind of one of the big things. What I really want to produce here, or what I want to introduce, is a principle of Überlaufen, and I also want to talk about the martial practicality of this, okay? My Krump typically should start and look just like an Oberhaupt. I'm pushing my sword out in front of me as my defense, and at this point, nothing has happened to make it a Krump yet. When I get about here, that's when I'm starting to push my pommel and creating that crooked action from which the Krumphau, the translation of the Krump. So in this situation, if Chris is in left ox, he's blocked off his upper left opening, right? If I'm attacking towards it, he's probably not going to want to do anything, because he's going to block my attack without doing anything, right? Okay, if he does do something, let's say he tries to thrust me in that moment, all right? So we're here, I cut an Oberhaupt and Chris tries to thrust me, right? What actually happens is he exposes himself. He makes it to where both his hands and his head are no longer protected. And that is pretty counteractive to everything in the manuscript. Just gonna say that. But you may say, Chris is shorter. Chris has less reach. Chris, may not be able to do it. Aaron Schober, step right up. Much bigger, right? Much more reach. Here we are. If I cut towards Aaron's head and he tries to thrust me, guess what happens? His head becomes exposed. His hands become exposed, right? So it's not just a matter of reach and height and things like that Chris can't reach me. It's just how it works due to geometry. But, all right, so let's get into it. If he does try to, let's talk about the Überlaufen principle. We are overreaching. We're trying to cut with the tip, the point, right? So many times I personally have tried to Krump to the hands when he's in left ox, like this, right? And that is very dangerous. I don't So what I want to introduce here is the focus of the big step out to the right-hand side, and I don't want to crump forward. I want to crump to the side. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate that here. Chris is in his left ox. If I step far to my left side and cut with the point, I have now taken myself off of the center line. If he stands there, he gets hit in the hands, because standing there makes sense, because it looks like an overhow coming in. I want to remain defensive. If he tries to thrust me, right, because I'm stepping off of the center line here, he's exposing his hands. He's saying, here, my hands are closer to you now, right? So it's kind of one of those things to where if I'm really stepping off to the side, and I typically, previously when I attempted this, I would not be. I would just, he'd be here, and I'd be like, well, you're supposed to crump to the hands, and I would do a half fast step off to the side, right? But if I'm really stepping off to the side and trying to introduce this principle of Überlaufen, right? Then I'm really creating a good scenario to where I can make this happen and stay defensive. One last thing, nowhere in the manuscripts is my opponent mindless, but nowhere am I mindless. There's a number of instances to where you recognize what's happening in the action. You see that he's fighting short. You see that he's being defensive. That is throughout the 3 manuscripts I talked about. So in this situation, if I see that he's crimping towards, or that I'm trying to crimp his hands and he's thrusting towards me, left ox, there you go. All right, I could pull out, right? Forget it, it's not gonna happen. B, I could crump to his sword. So he tries to thrust me, I just change, and now I crump to the sword and reset, right? Or C, I adjust my footwork and my body, wait for me, right? I adjust my footwork and my body to stay at further range or stay farther out. So, that's my thoughts on the crump to the ox, and we look forward to coming at you very soon with the next video.